First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next order of business is to adopt the agenda. Don, any changes to the agenda?
No, there are no changes.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've adopted the agenda. Next item on the agenda is the open forum, and I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. Most of you may be aware that over the last several days, there's been a fair amount of email exchange where suggesting that the city is guilty of, well, we're not sure what we're guilty of yet. But there is a pending civil action, at least being discussed, in addition to an administrative action and a criminal complaint that's been filed against us. That being the case, we're not going to have any discussion at this meeting during the open forum or otherwise about anything having to do with either of the two new buildings, the financing of those buildings, anything to do with that, nothing that has to do with the pending legal in litigation. Mike, do you need to add anything to that?
Mayor and Council, just the fact that there's plenty of alternative forums available if folks who want to talk about those things. They can come through their attorney. There are other places where they can make those issues known.
So that being said, with the open forum, if anyone wishes to address the council on items not on the agenda and not having to do with the items I just described, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you can have 5 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move. There's no visitor presentation. The next item is the consent agenda. All items are approved in one motion unless a council member wishes to remove an item. Everybody okay?
I'm fine.
Can I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We approve the consent agenda. Next item is the payment of the bills, the approval of the claims roster. I'll make a motion to approve the February 10th, 2014 claims roster in the amount of $580,213.41. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the donation, the claims roster. Donations. Who wants to take a shot at the approving of an ordinance or a motion to approve the donations?
I'll go ahead and make that motion. We have a long list tonight, thankfully. I move that we approve Resolution 14-10, a resolution accepting donations from the following parties. From Riverfront Printing in the amount of $100 to PNR Safety Camp. Assume that's Park and Rec. From Lions Tap, multiple donations, $50 each to Concerts in the Park, Movies in the Park, T-Ball and Safety Camp. Fresh Seasons Market has donated $25 to Movies in the Park. IWCO, Instant Web, has donated $100 to Safety Camp. The Victoria Lions Club has donated $3,675 to the Fire Department for EMT training. The Victoria Veterinary Care Clinic has donated $75 each to Concerts in the Park and Movies in the Park. So I move we accept these donations with gratitude.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We accept with gratitude the kind donations. There's no public hearing tonight. We have unfinished business. Don?
Mayor and Council, the first item is a planning item, and our Community Development Director, Holly Kreft, will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The agenda item before you this evening is a preliminary plat, and it also includes a rezoning as well as a conditional use permit for a planned unit development. Included in your packet is the preliminary plat for Wasserman Lake Woods. We reviewed a sketch plat of this property last year, and last Tuesday the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this. The preliminary plat is very similar to the sketch plat. There are a number of fixed points relative to this property. Lake Wasserman is on the north side, along with a large wetland complex and wooded area. There's an existing shared road here that was platted as part of the Lakeside Estates development. And then on the eastern side, there'd be an access to connect to the future Lake Town development. Also part of this, the topography of the site is, again, it's a rolling site with wooded areas and a large wetland complex located in the center of the site. You can see this maybe a little bit better through the color rendering that was included in your packet as well. Again, you can see the wooded area on the north and east sides, the connection here that's shared with Lakeside Estates, and then a future development that would occur to the south. The Planning Commission again reviewed this last Tuesday, and one of the previous maps that the Planning Commission had looked at another meeting was just how are all these developments tying together. And you can see here on the south side of Lake Wasserman, the city's approved Lake Wasserman Ridge, and we'll be looking at a second final plat for a second edition of that this evening. Again, this is Lakeside Estates, and then this is the preliminary plat that's before you this evening. Something that we discussed at Planning Commission were what are some future developments that might be coming on the horizon, and so those are the green areas that are noted on the map.
Holly? Question about the green area. I know at one point in time there was a section slated to Lennar, and then Lennar evidently lost the option on that. Is that the green area, or is that another area?
That is actually the plat that we're looking at this evening. At one time they had option on this 40 acres. They do own this property still in the green.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
So the Planning Commission again reviewed the preliminary plat at their public hearing last week. No one, adjacent residents or property owners spoke for or against it. I did hear from the property owner, Dave Holla. He was unable to attend, but he is supportive of it. And then this evening, representatives of the development company are here if you'd like to have any questions of them, as well as Commissioner Peterson is in the audience if you have any questions of him as well. The Planning Commission did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the preliminary plat, the rezoning from agricultural to residential, and the conditional use permit for the planned unit development with the conditions that are noted. They did just request a clarification that the applicant is asking for a total of 18 months extension for submittal of the final plat. And the reason for that is, going back to the overall map, the sewer is coming from the west and through the Lakeside Estates, so they're dependent on when they can start, depending on when that sewer and water is available. So they are requesting an extension, and Planning Commission recommended approval just with that clarification. If you have any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer those.
Holly, I have one. If I live in the northeast corner of Wasserman Lake Woods. Right.
Here?
Yeah, right there.
I'll pull up the,
Just generally, how do I get out of my neighborhood? How do I get into either Marsh Lake Road 43 or 11?
you'll be going through the Lakeside Estates development. So there is again, that shared street that'll connect, and then the access point is here. Because Marsh Lake Road is a future county road, and that'll be on the agenda later this evening as well, there is limited access. Then you would also be able to connect in the future when the Hess property to the south develops. There'll be another connection to Marsh Lake Road, so that would probably be a shorter connection. And then as development occurs to the east, you'd be able to connect through the Lake Town development.
That would be at Highway 11, or would that?
County Road 11.
County Road 11. Thank you. Questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move we approve Resolution 14-11, a resolution approving a preliminary plat, rezoning, and conditional use permit for a planned unit development for Lake Wasserman Woods, as submitted by the Golden Valley Land Company for property located at 5980 Marsh Lake Road and owned by Halla Properties.
Somebody want a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the preliminary plat. Wasserman Ridge, the second edition, final plat.
Mayor and Council, Community Development Director Holly Kraft will give a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, as we just touched on, this is a second edition as proposed by Ryland Homes for Lake Wasserman Ridge. The majority of the site was graded last year, and so this is the next phase in that. And as part of the extension of the major trunk sewer line that was completed, that was installed last year as well. So that will be served for the second phase located here along Marsh Lake Road. The Planning Commission also reviewed this at their meeting last Tuesday and discussed the future access, which will be to Marsh Lake Road through the Lakeside Estates addition. There's also some discussion about what would happen to Outlot B in the future. As noted on a later agenda item, Marsh Lake Road will most likely be realigned, and that will leave somewhat of a gap. In our discussions with the county and the developer, we'd at that time decide what we basically want to do with that property, but that would be deeded to the city at this time. It'll also be heavily landscaped to provide a buffer from the existing roadway to the development. And then Outlot A is a wetland and buffer that will be deeded to the city. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of the final plat with the conditions noted in the resolution. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Council questions? Holly, just roughly, how many homes have we approved this year in the Wasserman area?
This in 2014, it
Well,
would
2013 and
approximately 250.
And how many more to go, roughly?
There's a fairly significant area as we continue to the east with properties that are owned by Lennar that aren't available to be developed because of the lack of sewer at this time. So I don't want to give a ballpark number because it will be wrong. So.
Fair enough. But all of this is possible because we invested $1.7 million plus or minus in the trunk sewer line, is it not?
Correct. Had we not done the development that was done last year, we did look at the vacant lot, the most recent vacant lot inventory, and we would be under 20 vacant lots available.
Other questions, comments? Someone want to make a motion?
I move we approve Resolution 14-12, a resolution approving the final plat for Lake Wasserman Ridge, second edition for Ryland Homes for property located east of County Road 43 and north of Marsh Lake Road.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. It passes. New business, Don?
Mayor and members of the City Council, our city engineer, Kara Guerin, will give an update on a JPA agreement with Carver County to study upgrading Marsh Lake Road. Kara?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a timely item following up the two previous items. I'm going to just ask Holly to pull up that handy map you had with the developments happening along Marsh Lake Road. So Marsh Lake Road is in the city's jurisdiction. When we annexed that property, we annexed through the right-of-way, so we have jurisdiction over Marsh Lake Road. However, in the county's long-term street comprehensive plan, transportation comprehensive plan, Marsh Lake Road becomes a county road, so basically an extension of Pioneer Trail. Someday in the long-term plan, it ultimately connects up to Laketown Road, right, on the west side. That's a ways out, but in the long-term plan, it's a county road across the county. So as development started occurring, coming around starting with Lake Wasserman Ridge and moving to Lakeside Estates, we've been struggling, I would say, a little bit with just making sure that we're having the right information for developers up front so they can understand what the long-term plans are for the county road. So we had done a fair amount of studying back in probably 2005 on the intersection of Marsh Lake Road and County Road 43, so we had a couple of different alignments that the city and the county had worked on. So when Lake Wasserman Ridge was platted, we planned for what the future alignment of the road would be, but that information really only existed up to the limits of the Lake Wasserman Ridge plat. So there hasn't been any studies done for the rest of Marsh Lake Road back to County Road 11. So what we're seeking to do is complete a feasibility study so that we can have a better understanding of what the long-term plans are for the road. So specifically what the horizontal alignment will look like. Because it's going to be a county state aid highway, it has certain standards that it needs to meet, like County Road 43 or County Road 18. That's the type of road we're talking about. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right amount of right-of-way when plats come in, and that the curvature, the ultimate curvature on the road isn't too tight for the traffic that will be on it. So the study will help us figure out what the roadway alignment would be, confirm what the right-of-way needs are, and then also take a closer look at access spacing. So far, we've been just navigating off of generalized access spacing guidelines, where the study will look at the specifics of the corridor and what driveways are currently there, and better place any access points between the Lakeside Estates neighborhood and County Road 11. The other thing that we're lacking is we don't have a good ballpark estimate of what it's going to cost to improve Marsh Lake Road. A while back, the council approved paving, just putting asphalt down past the first development by the developer of Lakeside Estates is actually paving from County Road 43 up past that access. From a sales perspective, they didn't want it to be gravel, but that's not going to be a long-term solution. The road does need to be reconstructed with a sand section and the whole 9 yards. So our goal for the feasibility study is also to walk away with a cost estimate, so both the county and the city can start planning to fund those long-term improvements. Neither one of us have it in our current 5-year CIP, but we are probably both going to need to get it in our future CIPs, and it would be much better to have an actual preliminary cost estimate than just a napkin guesstimate. So Carver County will actually do the bulk of the feasibility study in-house. They will need to go to outside consultants for geotechnical services, and they solicited 2 proposals for that work. The low quote for the proposals was included with the JPA. Once they get into the study, they might find that they need some water resource expertise that they might have to go to an outside consultant for, but otherwise they'll be doing all the work in-house, which keeps the cost down significantly for the study. They're asking the city to participate in 50% of the cost of those outside consultants. So at the high end, that's estimated to be a $20,000 cost to the city, but it will likely be less than that. We don't have this feasibility study in our 2014 budget, so staff is recommending that we take the funds from our long-term street maintenance fund. This is our road, we have to maintain it long-term. It seemed consistent with the purposes of that fund to fund the study out of there. And with that, I will take any questions.
Council questions?
Kara, with construction of a road, what's the city's obligation split with the county in terms of the construction?
So there's a cost share policy between the Carver County and any local units of government, so it's a relatively complicated cost share policy, but we would have a significant portion of obligation of cost towards
More than half?
constructing. I think it's less than half if it's in their capital improvement plan. So,
And what's the approximate generic cost per mile to build a road?
I'm putting this one, and this is purely a guesstimate,
Yep.
2 to 3 million.
What's the what's the total distance that we're talking about here?
I don't remember. She can measure it quick.
2 miles?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But just get it close. Yeah, that little curve in the road there that she just went past, that's where 6 Mile Creek runs through between the 2 lakes. So part of figuring out the alignment is figuring out how to cross that creek. And then obviously something will have to be constructed culvert-wise, bridge-wise to get across there. 1.66 miles.
This may have been maybe 2 years ago. I think we reviewed some preliminary plans for what Marsh Lake Hunt Club might look like redeveloped. And so, any timing related to that? And if so, what do we have to do from a sewer standpoint to prepare for that? How does that fit into this?
So planned sewer, the sewer needs to cross that creek just east of the Lake Wasserman Woods plat. So once it gets past that creek and Lennar develops that next property, the sewer will then go south of Lake Town to the intersection of Marsh Lake Road and 11. The staging plan and the comprehensive plan has the sewer kind of going down around 11 and then back up around the Hunt Club based on the feedback from the Hunt Club at the time that we did that comprehensive plan. As part of this study, what the city asked to take the lead on is any property owner discussion. So Holly and I will be facilitating dialogue with the landowners adjacent to the property to make sure that they're involved in the process, and certainly we'll be talking with the Hunt Club as part of that as well.
So development will follow counterclockwise?
Yeah.
Clockwise, excuse me.
Yep.
Once the road is paved, couple questions. What's the trigger for the county to more or less, I guess it's kind of an annexation when they take over the road and make it a county road, or?
We're going to have to work together to figure out that timing of when. Part of it's going to be funding driven, part of it's going to be need driven. We're indicating this as being an important east-west corridor for the city, so it's going to depend on prioritization of other road needs in the county.
Is it I guess where I was going is if we make an investment in this road and it's a city asset, does the county compensate once they annex that road?
No, if we were to take the lead on funding the improvements and then turn it over to the county wouldn't reimburse us in any way. That's why it's better to approach this jointly. This is very similar to how County Road 18 was built. Originally, County Road 18 did not exist, so as development came through, the right-of-way was reserved, and then the county took the lead on constructing the improvements, but the city cost-shared per their policy.
Thank you.
Kara, what's the risk associated with the right-of-way being insufficient to handle what the feasibility study concludes is the desired approach?
So the area that's been platted so far, we've worked very closely with the county to make sure we have what we need, so we're comfortable with what we have thus far. But down the road, if you didn't reserve the right-of-way that you needed, then you'd have to go through condemnation and you'd be in people's backyards, which...
Well, that's what I was getting at. What's the likelihood we're going to be in somebody's backyard?
Don't know till we do the study, but that's the point in getting out in front of the platting. The study may show that there's existing homes that potentially would be identified as being in the way, and then the county will have to work through that process, but I don't anticipate that on this road.
And I'm assuming when the county does a study in joint partnership with us that there's some balance between the straightest line for the road, which may make the most engineering sense, and the cost associated with delivering that straight line.
Depending on how the improvements are getting funded, both from our perspective and their perspective, there are minimum standards that we're going to want to try to meet so that, for example, our state aid dollars that we collect annually can be used to pay our portion of the improvements, but it does require that the road does meet certain minimum standards, but certainly having a role in it helps us participate in the process more directly versus just being a stakeholder.
Other questions or comments?
Kara, how long does the study go for? When do we get the results? And how does this priority compare to, say, the road that we are currently studying that we just approved? I think it was a few meetings ago up on 5.
I think we talked about having information by spring, was what our conversation was for a timeline for the county for having things completed. This has 78th Street in Kachia is the other road that you're referring to that we're currently completing a feasibility study for, which I'll be hopefully bringing the results of in the next month or so. I don't think the traffic is anywhere near where it needs to be to recommend investing that kind of money yet in reconstructing this road. As development continues to occur along that area, we're going to start to get complaints and pressure from people who currently live along there and people who move in saying, we want this road improved. Holly and I have been talking that probably in the 5 to 10 year window, we're going to have to get that planned and completed based on what we know today.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'll make a motion to approve a joint powers agreement between Carver County and the City of Victoria for completion of a feasibility study along Marsh Lake Road between County Highway 43 and County State Aid Highway 11. Is there
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've approved the feasibility study. Committee, commission member vacancies. Don?
Yeah, Mayor and members of the City Council, I just wanted to give you an update on our process for soliciting applications for some vacancies that we have on several of our commissions. And this happens annually, so this year we have one opening on the Finance Committee, and so far we haven't received any applications yet. And let me just back up. People's terms end at the end of March, and so we're asking for applications to be submitted by March 7th, and the interview process is scheduled for our meeting on March 24th. The Park and Rec Committee, we have 4 openings. So far, we've received 1 application. The Planning Commission has 3 openings this year, and we've received 1 application. And the Victoria for a Lifetime Committee has 6 openings, and we've gotten 0 applications. So I just wanted to go on record as encouraging people to submit applications for any of the commissions. It's, we welcome newcomers to participate in this volunteer program to help the city, and I would encourage the council members to, if you know of anybody who may be interested, suggest that they apply for any of the open positions.
Yeah, this city is only as good as the people who, in large measure, and the people who put their name on this list of volunteers. Please, we need your help. If you know of anyone who would be a good candidate, some of these committees, in particular Park and Rec, is a good place for a young family to start if they were interested in what's going on with city government and in facilitating the construction of parks and trails. They play a really significant role. Similarly, in the Finance Committee, that's a vital component of the city's budget process, and we desperately need a qualified volunteer for that, and not to mention the Planning Commission. I mean, I've talked in the past about the role that those folks play. It's detailed, hard work in many respects, but certainly you're in the forefront of everything that gets built in this city. And so the ability to make a contribution, a meaningful contribution, is pretty significant. So please, we need your help. Get the word out to people watching this on tape. It's an easy enough process to complete. Call Don, call City Hall, and they'll be glad to guide you through it in detail. So please help our city.
And Mayor and Council, information for the committees as well as the application is on the city's website. So I encourage people to take a look at that. So with that was for information purposes only.
Information. How about the City Council meeting rules?
Mayor and members of the City Council, a couple of months ago, the City Council had asked for some guidelines for public participation in our overall meeting process. For people who aren't familiar with how the council operates, this would be a handy guideline for people to take a look at. And what I'd like to do is just quickly go through it on a page-by-page basis so that the public can hear about this. I think the first page is really the order of business, and it lists the items on the agenda and where the agenda is posted and how you can get access to it through our city's website. The next page is really about the council voting, and it talks about what a majority is and some of the items that require a supermajority, and this is primarily for information purposes. The next page is really some guidelines that we're looking for the council to comment on, is addressing the city council. And there's a number of items on here. The open forum, which we've had in place for quite a while now, just talks about how citizens can address the city council for items not on the agenda. Kind of describes what the consent agenda is. public hearings. Public hearings are required by law for certain items and allows the public to speak in those cases. The last two items really are finance, new business, and unfinished business. Typically, public participation has not been allowed. Or there's no requirement for public participation in these items. I think historically, the city council has allowed for public input. And what we've tried to do is put together a form, which is on the last page, for citizens who wish to speak on any item on the agenda to fill out their form, either hand it to me or the mayor prior to the meeting so that we're aware of people who want to speak and what topic they're on. And the guidelines are set up similar to what we use for open forum right now. One speaker, they have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. So just some really basic guidelines for public input. So with that, these are pretty basic guidelines. And if the council has any comments or questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them.
We had an incident several sessions ago, Don, where a group of people got up and yielded their time to another individual. And is there a limit, a practical limit? I'm kind of torn between, I don't want to limit someone's ability to speak, but yet that could go on ad infinitum.
The Councilmember Crowley, we did talk about that situation. The original guidelines that we were going to give to the City Council were much more detailed, and we tried to back it off a little bit. I think what this document says is that the mayor has the ability to limit discussion on any item.
Okay. Thank you.
And they can't allocate their time to somebody else.
Anyone else?
I think even in the absence of the expanded opportunities to speak, this is a great tutorial on how the council runs and kind of organizes meetings. So I think that's just having that out there for people to read and get familiar with, I think, is a good thing. And I like this. Just kind of tell us what you want to talk about, so we can sort of prepare that in an orderly way. So I don't know if this is the final form or how it'll evolve from here, but I think this is a great start.
Joe?
Yeah, I guess what I had a problem with before was that, the open forum was for people to talk about items that weren't on the agenda. And I felt like the residents should be able to come and talk about the things that are on the agenda. So I felt like there just wasn't a good spot to actually have a good, engagement there. But I hope this will work. My question, though, is, so the request form, just a couple clarifications on it. Does the form actually have to be in prior to the meeting in order for, let's say somebody's late, are they still going to be allowed to speak, or are we going to have people running up with forms throughout the meeting? Another thing would be, do people actually have to sit through a meeting? Can they
Like
just
we do?
come up, you're right, just come up later when the time is right? If we've got a lot on the agenda and they think it's going to be 2 hours long, do they have to show up early, put in their form, they can go to dinner, come back, and then speak? I just want to know how that's going to work, because I just don't want it to seem like we're limiting access.
Councilmember Pavelko and other council members, I think this is a work in progress. So we'll, the intent, as everybody has indicated, is to give people the opportunity to speak. And I think if somebody comes in late, we'll figure out a way that we get the information over to the mayor. And it may involve somebody coming up during the meeting and saying, I wish to speak. So I think we'll have to wait and see how this works out. I certainly understand people, if we have a very lengthy agenda and it's the last item on the agenda, and I agree. I don't think it's appropriate to make people to sit and wait, but I think we'll try to accommodate everybody, and we'll see how it works.
I think the hope is, and I think everyone here really supports the direction this is going, and it never, as you point out, Joe, it never made any real sense that you could talk about something that's not on the agenda, but the stuff that's important enough to get you here to hear the discussion that you can't talk about. So the hope was that this would go in a long way in correcting that potential shortcoming. The other questions you raised, should somebody fill out the form before the meeting? I mean, my thought was if you care enough about the item, you'll show up in time to fill out the form, and the form takes 30 seconds really to fill out, and you give it to Don or me or any one of the council members for that matter.
Well, I think related to that, we're adopting a specific agenda for the evening. There should be a known number of requests up front to be included in that agenda. And if they're not, and actually include that as part of the statement in the agenda, there are 3 people that have requested to speak, and that gets approved as a part of the agenda.
And we could probably email these as well ahead of time?
Well, we can certainly make the form available on the city's website as part of the council packet. Yeah, because this form will be up there. So we'll do a little, we'll do a little marketing program so that people are aware of it.
And we'll try. I mean, this is a fairly radical step for the city council to take, and but directionally it's necessary, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we won't get it quite right at first, but we'll fix it.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the point, is to get the outcome, not the...
So beginning, how soon do you want to begin? Next meeting?
Next meeting, yeah, absolutely. If that's acceptable to the city council.
Sure.
Yep. Go ahead and do it. That concludes reports of the...
Yeah, our staff recommendation, so the council, our recommendation is that you adopt the meeting rules. Do you
Would
want
like us to vote on that?
I think it would be appropriate for a quick vote.
I move we adopt the city council meeting rules as presented tonight for the City of Victoria city council meetings.
I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We've approved. I'll go forward with communicating. Reports of the city manager.
Mayor and members of the city council, I'd like to give you a quick update on where we stand with the building project. And really what I'm going to report on tonight is the city hall. So we had a meeting last week with staff. Mayor O'Connor attended, and we went through building material samples and some colors and that sort of thing. And based on input that we've received from the public, I'd just like to show you a kind of the rendering we had previously and kind of the new rendering with some different color schemes. So this was an initial rendering, kind of a lighter color, and it had silver frames and mullions in the window glass, and we just had brick or stone on the front portion of the building. Holly, if you just go to the next slide. Based on comments that we've received from the public, as well as input from staff and others, we recommended that the stone color be a little bit darker, and we went to a more, it's not bronze, but they call it as champagne kind of frames for the window glass and the mullions. And, we all feel that this gives it a more kind of a natural look. I don't think the overhead doesn't really do it justice, but we're looking at a little darker colors. Holly, if you go to kind of the rear elevations now. So we have a couple of options from a rear elevation standpoint. One of the things we've talked about is adding some, Councilmember Crowley brought it up at our last meeting, was trying to wrap some stone around the rear of the building. So this was one option where we kind of mirror the front of the building, where we have some higher stone in a couple of locations. And the next slide, please. So this is just a different, it's just a different option. Has a couple of columns going up the back of the building with some lighting placed on it to illuminate the rear of the building. So really just designed to kind of tie the back of the building around into the front and to give the rear of the building a little more interest.
You've changed the windows as well. You want to...
Yeah, the window...
front and back.
Sure. Holly, you want to go to the front elevation? And I thought the city council had seen this, but based on discussions with the library and some input we've received from some other people, we've added kind of that storefront glass. Yeah, perfect. So we've added the storefront glass to the west side of the building to more match the eastern side of the building, provide more light and give people the opportunity to see what's happening inside the building from the front building elevation. On the rear elevation, excuse me, what we've done is there were some smaller windows along the rear building elevation. You know, the library had commented that they'd like to have more of the ability to take advantage of the views overlooking the band shell and the Three Rivers Park District. So what we've done is where the stone is wrapped around the glass, we've expanded kind of the window areas. We also, if you look on the second floor, there were 3 windows in the council chambers, and there were also 2 windows in the conference room. So what we've done is we've removed 2 of those windows, and on the office portion of the building, which is towards the east, is we've just made those windows a little bit bigger to provide more light into the office space. Other than that, the building elevations are similar to what the council has seen previously.
And the next step, of course, is cost.
Cost is a driving issue. We received the plans late this afternoon. Those have been forwarded to our construction manager to do a cost estimate. And so we should have those numbers back to us hopefully early this week. You know, obviously the goal is the $5 million construction number. The library is moving on pace. It's actually moving very quickly. You know, they've engaged an architect and they're doing a lot of work. I participated in a conference call last Friday to really talk about detailed items within the building, you know, cabling and security and those sorts of things. So it's moving along quickly.
What do you need from us tonight?
Really nothing. I just wanted to, unless you had some comments about kind of the revised building elevations and the colors, we're proceeding as is.
I really like, for one, I really like the darker version. I think it's much, contextually, it's, and I sound like an architect now. I really like the second option.
Yeah, we've done a couple of things. You know, there was a comment about the doors on the ends of the building. You know, so we've raised the stone to kind of enclose the doorways. Other than that, just trying to make it a little more architecturally interesting. What we will do, you know, before, we'll have a materials board put together, so you'll see the actual colors, and we'll bring that in as soon as it's prepared.
You might consider also bringing in the floor plans again to go through that with a little more detail and show the lobby entrance. There's really been some pretty nice work done, and I think everybody might enjoy seeing that.
One of our obligations as a part of the land swap agreement with the Hartmans was to have complementary architectural designs. So have we talked with the Hartmans about their design and this, and confirmed that this meets?
We have met with Terry, and he actually brought his building material samples over for us to take a look at, because we didn't really know what he was thinking from a colors perspective. I think these colors will tie in closer to what he was proposing. In terms of being architecturally compatible, not necessarily, but Terry, I got the impression in talking to Terry that he's comfortable with the way that this building looks, and that not every building in downtown Victoria needs to look the same.
Yeah, I guess the important thing is we're meeting the spirit or the obligation of the agreement.
Yep.
Okay. Reports, that's the reports of the city manager. Reports of the city attorney.
Nothing in this meeting, Mayor.
Council members?
Nothing.
We have listed a closed session.
Mayor and Council, just let me expand upon the comments that the mayor was making earlier. I believe that based on the emails and other information that we saw over the weekend, that there is a credible threat of pending litigation against the city. Based on that, the open meeting law 13D.05 subdivision 3B would permit the council to adjourn to a closed session to pursuant to the attorney-client privilege to talk about some elements of that pending and threatened litigation. If you decide to do that, we would make the motions, then adjourn. In that meeting, I basically would propose to limit the discussion to some basic issues that I think we can talk about now and identify issues that would have to wait for further discussion.
I move we adjourn to closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're going to closed session.